Termites don't announce themselves with a bang. They come in quiet, a soft-sounding wall when you knock your knuckles against it. A floorboard that gives just a little too easy under your boot. A fine trail of what looks like sawdust but isn't, sitting in a small pile near the baseboard like something spilled and never swept. You catch it out of the corner of your eye on a Tuesday evening, and your stomach drops before your mind even catches up to what you're looking at. You get down on your knees, and there it is. That faint, damp, almost musty smell, like a basement that's never seen the sun, and you know in your gut that something has been eating your house while you slept in it. Maybe you already spent money trying to fix it. A spray bottle from the hardware store, $40 gone, sprayed along a baseboard that did nothing but make the room smell like a chemical plant for 3 days. Maybe you called a company, and a young man in a uniform walked around your foundation for 10 minutes and handed you a bill with more zeros on it than you were ready for, and told you they'd be back next year to do it all again. And still, when you press your thumb into that soft wood by the window frame, it gives. It just gives, like wet cardboard, and you feel that old, familiar shame. The one that says, you should have caught this sooner. You should have known better. You worked too hard for this house to let it get eaten out from under you. I want you to hear me on this, plain and clear. That is not your failure. That is not carelessness, and it is not ignorance. That is the natural result of living in a world that has forgotten how to look at a house the way our grandfathers looked at one, not as a box to be sprayed and forgotten, but as a living thing that needs tending. The same way a field needs tending, the same way a herd needs watching. The modern world sold you convenience and took away your understanding. It sold you a bottle with a label you couldn't pronounce and told you that was progress. And I am here to tell you, plain and honest, that there is an older way, a cheaper way, and a truer way. And by the time we are done here today, you will have 7 verified rules in your hands that no termite in Lancaster County or anywhere else can stand against, using nothing but what is sitting in your own kitchen cupboard right now. I am Beiler, and I keep house and farm here in Lancaster County the way it was handed down to me before the world got so fast. My dad taught me, and his dad taught him, and none of us ever called an exterminator because none of us ever needed to. We used what God gave us and what the general store sold for pennies, and we watched our houses stand for 100 years without rot and without ruin. That is not nostalgia talking. That is generations of practical results, tested the hard way, on real barns and real homes, in real Pennsylvania humidity that would make a termite feel right at home if you let it. If you value this kind of plain, practical know-how that the world is trying to bury under $100 of pest control marketing, I'd ask you to subscribe to this channel. It helps us keep these old traditions alive for the next generation, and it tells me you want more of this kind of honest teaching instead of the noise everybody else is selling. Now, one honest word so you trust me, because I never want to promise you something a jar of powder cannot deliver. What I am about to show you will kill and repel termites, and it will do it well, and it will save you a great deal of money doing it. But if you already have a full-blown colony chewing through your main support beams, no cupboard remedy on God's earth is going to replace a structural repair, and I will not stand here and tell you otherwise. What these rules will do is stop a small problem from becoming that problem and keep a clean house clean for years at a time for the cost of what you'd spend on a cup of coffee. Now let me tell you something about how this whole business works, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The big pest control companies and the shelves of chemical sprays at the home store are not selling you a solution, they are selling you a subscription. Think about that word. A contract that has you paying every single year, forever, for a problem that, if it were truly solved, would need no more paying. That is not how you fix a leaky roof. That is not how a farmer fixes a fence. But it is exactly how the modern pest industry wants you to think, because a customer who is cured is a customer who stops paying, and a customer who is merely managed is a customer for life. The whole system runs on your not knowing what a worker termite looks like versus a flying elate, on your not knowing that the powder they spray costs them pennies a pound and gets marked up 100 times over, on your not knowing that borax, plain, old-fashioned borax, sitting in the laundry aisle of your grocery store for $4 a box, has been killing these insects effectively since before your grandparents were born. That is the plain knowledge I want to hand back to you today. It costs pocket change. It sits on a shelf next to the baking soda. And it works because it works on the insect's own body, not because a marketing team dressed it up in a fancy bottle. Let us begin with the first rule, and I call this one the miller's measure, because it comes from the same wisdom a miller uses when he's dosing grain against weevils. You are going to take plain sodium borate, that's the 20 mule team borax you'll find in the laundry aisle, and you are going to mix it with warm water and ordinary white sugar in a level ratio, roughly 1 part borax to 3 parts sugar, dissolved into warm water until it turns syrupy. Feel the texture with your own fingers before you seal it. It should be thick like a light corn syrup, not watery, not grainy. The sugar draws the worker termites in because their whole colony runs on trading food mouth to mouth, a habit called trophallaxis, and the borax rides along hidden in that sweetness. It disrupts their digestive lining and, more importantly, it kills the gut protozoa they depend on to break down wood at all. Without those protozoa, a termite can eat all the wood it wants and still starve to death from the inside. But hear me plain, the line between medicine and poison is only ever the dose. Too much borax and the worker dies too fast, right there at your bait, before it ever carries the poison home to the queen. You want a low-level patient dose, so the workers live just long enough to feed it to the whole colony. The second rule I learned from my own uncle, and we called it the cardboard snare. Termites cannot resist corrugated cardboard because corrugated cardboard is nearly pure cellulose with almost none of the natural defenses a living tree has. Take a few flattened cardboard boxes, wet them down until they're damp but not dripping. Press your palm against the surface. It should feel cool and moist, never soggy, and stack them near where you've seen activity out along the foundation or in a crawl space. The moisture and the exposed cellulose make it irresistible, a folk trick some called the sweet trap, because to a termite, wet cardboard is sweeter than a Sunday pie. Give it about a week, then lift the stack carefully and you'll often find dozens, sometimes hundreds gathered inside. At that point you don't spray them. You burn the whole stack, cardboard and all, well away from the house. This does two things a chemical never will. It draws the colony's attention away from your walls, and it lets you see, with your own eyes, how bad the infestation really is before you decide your next step. The third rule is what I call the diatom line, and this one works on a different principle altogether. Not poison, but simple mechanics. Diatomaceous earth, the food-grade kind you can find in the garden section of most any store, is made of the fossilized shells of tiny water creatures called diatoms, and under a magnifying glass those shells are sharp as broken glass, though invisible to us. Run your fingers through it dry. It should feel like fine, powdery chalk, never damp, because moisture ruins its effect entirely. When a termite crawls through a line of it, those microscopic edges cut through its waxy outer coating, and that coating is the only thing standing between the insect and drying out to death. Dust a thin, level line along the foundation cracks, around pipe entries, anywhere you've seen that telltale mud tube trail termites build to protect themselves from open air. A thin line does the work. A thick pile is wasteful and no more effective, so keep your hand light and even. The fourth rule concerns moisture itself, and I call this the damp wood warning, because if you remember nothing else today, remember this: termites cannot survive in truly dry wood. They need moisture the way a fish needs water. Walk your property after a rain and feel along your foundation, your windowsills, anywhere wood meets soil or meets a downspouts runoff. If the wood feels cool and slightly spongy under your thumbnail, that is an invitation you have unknowingly written out to every termite colony in the county. Redirect your downspouts, clear your gutters, keep mulch pulled back a good 6 inches from your foundation, because mulch holds moisture like a sponge and gives termites a bridge straight to your siding. This rule costs you nothing but an afternoon's labor, and it will do more long-term good than any bait you set. The fifth rule is one my grandmother swore by, and we called it the orange peel remedy, though the real ingredient at work is something called D-limonene, found in the oil of citrus peels. Termites' respiratory systems cannot tolerate it. It dissolves the waxy cuticle on contact, much like the diatomaceous earth does, but faster, more like a direct assault. Save your orange, lemon, and grapefruit peels rather than tossing them in the bin. Steep them in hot water for a day, strain out the solids, and you'll have a mild citrus solution you can wipe along baseboards window frames, and any wood you suspect is compromised. It won't reach deep into a wall the way a professional treatment might, but as a surface deterrent and a way to treat visible trails, it is remarkably effective, and it leaves your house smelling like a Sunday morning kitchen instead of a chemical plant. The sixth rule is the salt barrier, an old trick from farmers who dealt with termites long before any of us had a telephone in the house. Rock salt, drawn in a shallow trench around a foundation or packed into a crack where termites are entering, works through simple dehydration. Salt pulls moisture out of anything it touches, insects included. Feel the crystals in your hand. You want the coarse kind, not fine table salt, because the coarse grain holds its position and doesn't wash away in the first rain. This rule works best as a perimeter defense, not a cure for an active infestation inside a wall, but as a barrier it is held for generations, and it costs less than $1 a pound. The seventh and final rule is the one I consider the master rule, the one that ties every other rule together, and I call it the weekly watch. No bait, no powder, no peel water does a bit of good if you set it once and never look again. Termites are patient, methodical creatures, and so must you be. Once a week, walk your property with your own 2 hands, press your thumb into wood near the ground, run your fingers along mud tubes to see if they're freshly damp or old and abandoned, check your bait stations to see what's been drawn to them. This weekly discipline is what separates a house that stays clean for decades from a house that quietly loses a beam every 10 years. It costs you 15 minutes and it will save you thousands. Now, before we close, I want to speak to something my mother taught me in that kitchen, and it applies here just as much as it did to cooking. In a home run with care, there is no such thing as garbage. Those orange peels most people throw straight in the trash. After you've steeped them for your citrus remedy, don't discard them yet. Dry them fully in a low oven or in the sun, and they become a wonderful natural sachet to keep in cupboards and closets, repelling not just termites near the surface but ants and silverfish too, all while your linens smell of citrus instead of nothing at all. That cardboard from your snare trap, once burned, leaves behind ash you can work into garden soil for potassium. Even the used borax bait, once its work is done, can be diluted heavily and used as a mild fungicide for garden tools, wiped on and rinsed off. Nothing in this whole process needs to end up wasted, because nothing God gave us was ever meant to be wasted. That is not just thrift. That is a way of seeing the world where every part of your kitchen has more than one job to do. Let us talk plain numbers, because I know that matters to you as much as it matters to me. A single box of borax runs you about $4 and will make bait enough for a whole season. Diatomaceous earth runs another $7 or $8 for a bag that will last you a year or more. Add in the citrus you are already going to throw away and a bag of rock salt for under $1 a pound, and you are looking at maybe $20 total, spent once to protect your home for an entire year. Compare that to a pest control contract running anywhere from $500 to $1,500 a year, year after year after year, and you begin to see the real arithmetic of it. Over a decade, that is the difference between $20 and easily $10,000. But beyond the dollars, there is something I value even more, and that is what it teaches a child. When my own children watch me mix a bait or check a mud tube with my own hands, they learn that the world is not a mystery to be paid away. It is something you can understand, something you can hold in your hands and know is real. That is worth more than any savings account. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell me what state you're in, what county, and how old your house is, because I read every single one of them, and it does my heart good to know how far this old knowledge is traveling. And if this kind of plain, practical teaching means something to you, I'd ask one more time that you subscribe to this channel so we can keep passing these old ways down to folks who still want to know what's real.